Across the Flow FM network, a Flow News 24 update.
Well, folks, recently I spoke with the CEO of Epilepsy Australia, Carol Ireland. You may recall that conversation. We were talking about epilepsy. One of the reasons why is I have a brother-in-law who lives with epilepsy, but it was also because of the social media posts that I thought were very engaging. And one of the things I liked is that they were showing real-world situations, real people, ordinary people that have epilepsy. And sometimes we feel when we see an illness that they're not real people. They're almost imaginary because we don't know anyone. So we're starting to learn and who these people are and how we can hear their story and that they live with it. It is something they can live with. Just incidentally, the epilepsy.org.au website is where you can go to get more information for yourself, find out things like the National Epilepsy Helpline, which is available on 1300 374537. Also, you can book a telehealth appointment with an epilepsy nurse. That's what you can find just when you go to the homepage on epilepsy.org.au. You can also find out other amazing information about assistance, advice, education, training, understanding, awareness, and even how you can offer support as well. Find out that information. I urge you to check out the website, epilepsy.org.au. When I spoke to Carol, I said, Carol, I'd like to speak to someone in our Flow area. Is it possible? And she said, yes, I know just the right person. He's good at speaking in public. Well, we've been sitting here for the last half an hour, and I've finally said, Jack, I've got to stop. We've got to do our interview. And we're able to do that right now. I'm joined in the studio by Jack and here. Jack, thank you so much for joining us here today at Flow.
No worries, Clayton. Fantastic to be here.
So you've got epilepsy, but tell us your story. When did you find out? Tell us your story. How did it all come about for you?
Oh, the origin story. Oh, here we go, mate.
Is this a Marvel origin story? This is Iron Man. Are we going to hear about all that?
I was going to say, I have to get you to sign the disclaimer that Disney, and tell Disney that I own all the rights to that. But no, so to take you right back in a trip in time, so my epilepsy journey began in 2019.
Only recently, okay.
Yeah, so reasonably recently. However, again, origin story means I have to go right back to the start. Where I was a normal guy, I just finished high school in 2007. In November 2007, I just finished high school the year before in 2006.
Okay.
So I was doing what a lot of...
spring break, gap year sort of thing.
That's right, gap year. So I was like, all right, 12 months off, let's save money before I go to uni, because pretty much my pathway always put before me by mum and dad was, finish high school, go to uni. So I was like, okay, sweet, well, I'll do that. Everyone else around me was having gap years too. So it was just a year of partying and one of my most carefree years of my life, I hate to say mum and dad. Eventually they were right about them being the best years of my life. However, they are validated. But so we were just doing normal things, and I was working two jobs, one at my parents' business and the other one as a night filler at the local Coles. And
which just incidentally is not a bad job, okay? With any supermarket, night fill jobs are okay. Hand up, years ago did that.
Yep.
So brotherhood, here we go. So there are good jobs. They pay you money, kids. They pay you money.
Indeed, and as a casual, it was just once they worked out your work ethic, then it was just like, all right, here's all of the hours and all of the money. But it was a great little stint, and I think fondly back on the times. A couple of mates who I went to school with also worked at there, and all of the nights they did drop us home after the midnight run to McDonald's.
Yep.
But I had finished work for the day after as an admin assistant at my parents' business, saying, all right, what's up? Messaging my mates saying, what's up for the weekend? Where are we going out drinking this weekend? And then we finished that, went home to have a sleep, then started my night job. About halfway through that, had a carload of mates come through. Not unlike most every second or third Friday.
Yep. Pretty normal behaviour for the time. Yep.
Exactly. And if you remember yourself, Clayton, anytime you'd see friends and people you recognised while you're working, you're going to have a bad time. They're going to do things to annoy the hell out of you and undo your hard work. Not unlike that evening. But eventually, the source of it ultimately was they were bored and wanting to annoy people to fight off the boredom, being, Mount Gambier was where I grew up, and that was where all of this took place. And basically they said, do you want to come and do mainies with us later? And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds fantastic. So I said, yes, come pick me up. I've got to grab my brother, who was also a night fill kid at Woolies. We had, jokes around the rivalry. And so I said, come about 12:30, and I'll come out, stick my head out, and I'll join you in the car this evening. And so did that. Quickly picked up my brother, dropped him home, let Mum know that, Mum just doing the normal thing.
Yeah, hanging with my mates.
Hanging out with my mates, doing manies. We'll come in. I'll stick my head in and say I've come home when I've come home. Then I came out to a carload of mates who had the one spare seat. So in that car was Tim Moyes, or Cheese, Ben Hurigan, or Huri, Simon Hollins, or Hollins, and the driver of that car was none other than Nathan Hennis, or as the whole town knew him as Chuka. And you know,
yeah, I'd mate called Chook as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
His is when you think about the origin of his nickname, it's actually, for a nickname, it's quite complex. But as is a lot of the,
they are stories all alone. We could spend hours just talking about those. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was the Main Street crew for the evening, and off we went up and down the Main Street of Mount Gambier, terrorising people we drove past, yelling out things at them, and belting out timeless classics. Like Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
I thought you were going to say Kylie for a moment there.
No.
Jason Donovan.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was what we did for that evening.
Yeah.
And 2007. I'm fairly confident. I also remember just. There are a few plays of Gold Digger by Kanye.
Okay.
So this new guy who everyone was like, oh, this guy's cool. Showing my age a bit now, but. Ultimately, later on, after a few laps of the old Mount Gambier, do you U-turn at Faster Pasta, and do you U-turn at Domino's, and if you want to do a long mani, go out to the southeast and come back via everyone ends up at McDonald's. Yep. That's basically where everyone finds themselves. And so at about 2 a.m, all of everyone who was awake and had their driver's license at the time, all hanging out at McDonald's, and apparently Cheese got a call from a guy at a party out of town. Tim Smith, or Schmitty, and he said, "Mate, do you have, you got any? Yep. Can you hook me up with a lift? I just need to get back in town." And basically stuck his head and said, "Hey, Chook, can we grab Schmitty?" And Chook said, "Yeah, no dramas. Just give us, tell him give us 10 minutes to sort out a seat, because he had a full car at that point." And then apparently Hollins and I worked out that one of us. I'm a little vague on the details at this point. But somebody did tell me that we had a paper, scissors, rock contest to work out who was going and who was staying. And then...
Not a paper, rock, scissors, Spock? You didn't do one
No. The old classic one, the timeless one. So apparently I won that competition. And then we, went out with all the enthusiasm and the excitement of, somewhere else to be and explore. And we picked Schmitty up, stuck our heads in at the party, and he let us know who's in finest form and who was looking up with who. And it's as we've come back, we've come a couple of k's out of the outskirts of Mount Gambier, so on the open road speed limit, 110. And as we've come up to turn back onto Nelson Road from Yolhall Road, basically the major crash investigation cops think that Chook has looked right, seen nobody, looked left, seen nobody, and then slowly come out into the intersection. And in the time, just before he's rolled off, he's just momentarily got distracted by one of us, and as he's rolled into that intersection, it's the intersection, or the lead up to where Timmy Carrison, the guy who was driving the car, that unfortunately we were involved in a car accident between 100 and 110 k's an hour. And he was just in that one spot where a split second mattered. And everyone's been in and behind the wheel at some point. You go, ooh, that could have been really bad.
Yeah.
Well, this was just the one occasion where...
Are we talking getting T-boned here?
Yeah, T-boned. So,
wow.
we got T-boned on the driver's side.
Driver's side? Okay, yeah. Wow. Okay.
And I can't fault either Chuka or Timmy Garrison, because neither had both been the perfect role models of what a P plater should be doing. Yeah. They were desos for their mates, no drugs, no alcohol, no excessive speed. Just a case of the world's worst timing. And Chuka, unfortunately, was killed on impact. Ben Hurigan and Tim Smith were to die some hours later of both of a ruptured aorta.
Just, Jack, where were you sitting in the car?
I was sitting, so just to give you a full picture of that, so Chuka, if you can imagine, think of the above.
He's driving.
Chuka's driving.
Yeah.
Tim Smith was in the middle rear seat. Ben Hurricane was in the front driver's seat.
Yep.
Cheese was in the rear left, and I was on the rear right. So
And you got hit driver's side.
and we got hit driver's side.
So you got hit as well.
I did very much. There's
Okay. Yep.
yeah. There's a photo which in my motivational speaking talks and road trauma prevention one specifically, I point out, and I'm like, when I zeroed in on it, and the major crash investigation cops gave it to me for the first time, they said, make sure you're sitting down. And I'm glad that they did do that, because there's definitely a definitive spot where that would have had to have been my blood from the injuries that I sustained at the time, which from the top down were a hypothalamic bleed, so bleed on the brain, fractured my neck up so high that it's about a 5% chance of survival. I have heard and read that it's one of the ones that people can break in accidents such as that and think they're okay, but then they just turn their head too much and dislocate it, and that's the end, because it's so high it stops you breathing.
Yep.
I had a rupture of my inferior vena cava, which is the main blood vessel back to the heart, whereas Schmitty and Huri ruptured their aorta, which was the main blood vessel away from the heart. I also had a collapsed right lung, a tear of my iliac artery, damage to my right kidney. I ruptured my liver so badly they actually had to go in and basically open me up to barbecue my liver, effectively cauterize it shut to stop the bleeding on that. I also had a ruptured urethra so badly that I actually severed completely off my bladder, and I woke to the first time I discovered what a catheter was. I woke up to one, actually, and it was the non-normal way of of having a catheter in it. They actually had to cut open because of that injury in my urethra just completely disconnecting, and then they had to basically. That was just a little hole cut in my abdomen, which was the bane of my existence for the next 6 months, because it was just meant infection after infection after infection. But then from that, and why that possibly happened, was I had an open book fracture of my pelvis. My femur broke and basically formed a spear into my hamstring, which required surgical removal. And the last of my significant injuries were a compound break or an open fracture, so where the bone's broken through the skin of my tib and my fib on my right leg. One hell of an injury list, and I can't do anything apart from just go. Thank.
I'm just thinking, mate, how are you still here? Does that weigh on you at times?
It definitely.
We've got off the track a bit here, but I'm just going to keep going with this, if you don't mind. But does that weigh on you, because 3 of your friends are gone?
Definitely on waking up. I just burnt into my memory of on waking up is, I was in and out because I was put in a coma from the scene they took. Apparently I was conscious at the scene. I don't remember a single thing. Why I've referred to a few times in my story about apparently, I've actually been diagnosed with retrograde amnesia, which means patches for probably the 3 days leading up of my mind. But apparently, even being conscious, my brain's just going, nope, you're not forgetting this. And it manifested, or it was part and parcel of ultimately, my epilepsy journey and discovering I'm epileptic. But waking up, I just remember after having the worst nightmares of my life in those coma dreams. I just remember waking up and being like, where in the hell am I, and what in the hell has happened to me? And one of the first things I remember is seeing a skeletal version of Mum appear in my view after the nurses come and done my, what's your name, what's your age, who's the Prime Minister, what day is it, the consciousness check. And I remember for a few times asking her, what's happened to me, and she said, you're in a car accident. And apparently a few days later, because my next question was always, was everyone okay? And I'll never forget the way that she actually told me. She said, eventually, when she finally did, she said, no, Jack, not everyone was okay. Tim Smith passed away. Ben Horrigan passed away. And Chuka passed away. And
it's all right.
Shock is...
Take your time, mate. Take your time.
Sorry, mate.
No, do not apologise. Just take your time. It's all right.
And yeah, definitely the first thing I remember is just the shock of the realisation sinking in that, you're never going to have one of Chuka's gravity-defying hugs, or,
those things.
He was a big Chuka, a giant nickname for a literal giant, and or hang out with Schmitty or go gaming with Hori. It was definitely a hard thing to comprehend with at the young age of 18, when I was at the time, when you're bulletproof, indestructible, and I had my whole life ahead of me. I just accepted my place at uni, like literally days before the accident, and started my long road to recovery. It did mean that I had to have another 12 months off, so a second gap year, but then, and which is, I almost refer to it as putting a pause on what I was intending to do with my life, because in the next year, people started going off to uni, so that
life went on for them.
Life went on, exactly, and it is one of those things where you can't fault people for it, because it's just the empathy with exactly what you're dealing with is, unless you're on the front line, the trenches of it, being a parent or an immediate sibling, you just don't understand. Which initially got me, into talking about this to begin with, is, no one meant to upset me, but it's just what I was dealing with at that time. But I am very grateful that I had one hell of a support network, and that were able to pull me through during those hard times. But then ultimately 2009 rolled around and I went off to uni, and effectively life kind of went on as normal. As we were talking about earlier, there's always parts of it which it didn't mean completely normal. My new normal meant that, I couldn't be a carefree 19-year-old who just had been drinking all day while listening to the Hottest 100 and was like, hey, we're at the beach and I'm going to do a flip from this cliff into a rock pool. No, it did mean that I was like, hang on, what injuries have I had that could potentially really severely alter this outcome? So it did. I almost consider it as putting my risk mitigation, which comes with maturity and hitting about 25, forward about 10 years. So I was definitely a lot more careful in what I did, but it just taught me to take measured risks.
I can understand that. I can totally understand that, and I think that's probably a normal reaction to it all. You said there were 5 of you in the car. You've mentioned 3, plus yourself as 4. Number 5. Yeah,
so Cheese and Tim Carrison, the guy who was driving the car who hit us, they were both taken, as far as I remember, in a critical, I think it was critical but stable condition.
Okay.
So they were airlifted, I believe, via the MedStar helicopter from Mount Gambier to Adelaide. Yeah. I was flown by the Royal Flying Doctor Service because my situation was a little bit more critical and I needed to get there a lot faster. And somehow, the structures that SA Health has got in place to and in conjunction with the RFDS is one of the charities I'm always going to put my hand in my pocket and give to you every single time. So that was the situation in basically the lead up to that 3-week coma. And then afterwards, as I mentioned, was that point of coming to grips with it. And then, hit 2009, went off to uni. It was just a bit of a break from, I guess, everyone knows you, or because I was a positive story in that.
You survived.
I survived, exactly. Yeah. Like 3 other boys had died. I wasn't looking hopeful for a very long time there. I think about 4 days. Yeah. Mum recounts to me that basically they stepped me down slowly to be like, we're not sure he's going to make it. He's going to be a quadriplegic. He's going to be a paraplegic. He's going to be a vegetable. And pretty much there was success and positive milestones of me, responding to touch in my feet.
Jack, you got some angels looking after you, mate.
That's right.
Wow.
So, I can't do anything apart from, thank my lucky stars and thank the powers that be that I'm even here to begin with. But that's I guess a long-winded way of my origin story.
Yeah.
But as part of that, everything kind of dealt with or it was just time. I was young. I had a lot of stuff factors working for me. I knocked recovery time frames out of the park for a lot of my recovery. But then my neuro assessment at the time, as I said to you earlier, it kind of assessed me as being like, okay, well, we've assessed you for pretty much everything. Yeah. And you're on the normal bell curve, but you're at the very bottom and just about as an outlier for short-term memory and short and medium-term memory. And as I mentioned, that's actually a reasonably easy thing to mitigate, especially as, this was 2008. So smartphones existed, but weren't quite there. But, Outlook was getting better. Google Calendar was getting better. Come about 2000, when did I get my first smartphone? In 2011, 2012. It just meant I managed everything via Google Calendar. And I do to this day. Anything that was important went in there.
It's very handy, Google Calendar. I use it a lot myself.
Yeah,
that's what you mean. Yeah,
the G Suite is just fantastic. So it did enable me to get through uni to know, and I could see, as with any uni student, really,
plan yourself out.
Yourself out, know where your deadlines are, and then work backwards. So it helped me succeed and get through uni. Managed to get my role from there. But to jump back on that recovery just momentarily. Yeah, everything pretty much was like, oh yeah, tick. Orthopedics, yep, your bones are good. Yeah, you've got some metal in your legs that's going to be there for the rest of your life unless it causes issues. Tick, have a good life. We hope in the nicest possible way never to see you. Every pretty much department went through the tick and said, yep, you're an outpatient now. You come back, this is your number. But otherwise, have a good life.
Okay.
And then in 2000 it still was, as I mentioned, that emotional recovery took a lot longer.
Well, that's understandable. I can get that.
Yeah. So it was, I guess, settle into what normal life looked like and what possible extra challenges I was going to have with my backstory. And it was really, as I started probably, and, in order to deal with any of these situations, I was an 18-year-old kid, just not equipped. So I had to seek psychological help.
I think some older people would be sort of not really equipped as well. So to go what you went through, but I'll get your point.
Yeah, so I had to go and start seeking some psychological help. In hindsight, some of the earlier ones that I got and maybe didn't help me as much as it is also a lot fuzzier. But emotional.
Is that more to you or to them? The people.
More so for probably me. For my problems, it's kind of harder to, it's not a broken bone, which is like, 6 weeks immobilized, chuck a cast on him, then he'll be good. Yeah. It was kind of like, how are you feeling? And it was like, well, hang on, how am I feeling? And required a hell of a lot of introspection on my part.
And you might not want to talk about it at that time either. You just want to put it behind you and move forward.
That's right. And especially things like I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress as part of those nightmares specifically. Which took me years to deal with, and it was kind of the only part of my story. I'd be like, I'm going to stop and just say I'm not talking about this and go on and talk about everything else. But then I thought, okay, just purely by chance, my old psych, basically something happened, and basically the admin person said, oh, look, she's not going to be practicing anymore. Here's a list of people. So I went through my work employee assistance provider. Also, shout out to most organisations have an employee assistance provider to help you through the harder times, and just absolutely was the best thing that ever happened to me. The psych which I ended up with got me into eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR.
Okay.
Because what had actually happened is it was about 2016, 2017, and I started having. Someone described it to me and said an impending sense of doom, feeling off. Yep. In much later, I was to find out that was actually a PET email, but we were just like, okay, well, what the hell is this? So the first thing I did, CT scan, any brain abnormalities? No. Okay, cool. Well, it must be something psychological. So start going through the process of, okay, well, is it anxiety? Is it post-traumatic stress? And so we did treat it as post-traumatic stress because that largely looked like it was the point and possibly what was stemming from it. And so I did start dealing with these nightmares and as part of that process. If anyone who's done it, for those who haven't, it is almost magic.
Yeah.
Like you set your safe space to go when, if you're going deep and you need to come, and your psych's like, you need to come out of this. I can see you're visibly stressed. And the first set that they do of 30, the psych will sit close and just say, you got to think about the thing that's upsetting you and a heap of other stuff that the psych needs to prep you up. But then basically they just sit close and do this. You just follow their fingers with your eyes.
Okay.
And I can't believe it. Like it was, unless I'd experienced it myself, I just wouldn't have believed it. As you say, you just see people having seizures, for example, is another one, and you're just like, nah, that doesn't look like anyone I know, or this looks staged. But the first thing that happened with the EMDR was this tick started happening in my neck.
Okay. Yep.
What's going on? 10 into that, my whole body was starting to shake. And my eyes were opening and closing completely not of my own volition. And then by the end of it, my leg was going too. And my psych described to me after probably about 3 of them, she's like, it's like watching a car accident in slow motion with what's happening to your body at that time. And it's something to do with...
It's an interesting description that she chose to use. Yeah.
And especially, she's like, especially pertinent because she's like, I wonder if it's maybe your body doing that. Because my body noped out with that, or my mind noped out with that retrograde amnesia, I just was able to go, apparently your muscles store it or something. I'm a little confused as to the psychology and all that behind it and the pathophysiological processes, but it seemed to fix me. And I was like, sweet, I'm having a lot less of these. This must have been it. So basically we were going along with that. It was non-epileptic psychogenic responses. And she gave me some grounding techniques after, after about 10 of them, it was like I was fixed. So I stopped having these things. So we were like, sweet, that must have been what it was. She gave me some grounding exercises should one of these ever happen again, which is, what's around you, tell me about it. So if I was ever having one of those, and my wife could be there with me to help me through it, and mum or dad or whoever may have been around me. So again, starting to tell people about what you could possibly be doing or could be happening to you. But a lot of people describe it as the 1,000-yard stare. So like the just complete zone out. And just,
oh, okay. Yep.
Like that was sort of, and one of my brother's friends actually, he has epilepsy, and he described it as like an impending sense of doom. And I was like, yeah, it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
And then come 2019, I was late 20s, and I just said yes to everything to try and get my name out there and be, a bit more well-known in my industry, which involved me picking up, I think about one point, I was in 8 committees and planning a wedding, and all in a space of 12 months. And it just, I had... once to twice a month, I'd wake up in the middle of the night so stressed out about all of the stuff that I'd put on myself. So my sleep quality copped a hiding as a result of that. And then one day, apparently I just rolled over. Mum and Dad were staying with us, my wife in our house, my wife and ours house. And at this stage, she didn't have any kids. But I rolled over in the morning and messaged, or my dad had sent a message to be like, we're going to go and get some brunch. Do you guys want to join us? And I'd let my wife know, and then rolled back over to go to sleep. And when I sleep, apparently I'm really bad on I'll just put my hand up like that, or I'll just drop it randomly, which to my wife's ever irritants at the time, she often landed on her head, and she thought that was just what I was doing, and I'd gone back to sleep. And then I kept hitting her, and she had a look, and I was there. Apparently, I'd bit my tongue at that point, having a full grand mal seizure.
Oh, wow.
So what everyone knows as a seizure.
Yep.
I'd bit my tongue, so I had blood streaming out, and my wife was going... She describes it, she was like, I was absolutely traumatized. I thought something had gone wrong internally.
Yeah, can understand that,
blood. She screamed out for Mum. Mum came in, and basically... an ambulance arrived a short time later, and I came to just completely out of it, having no idea where I was. It kind of gave me a throwback to when I awoke in hospital all those years ago.
As it would. Yep.
Just being blinded by a light, being like, where in the hell am I and what's going on? And it was a journey for sure. Again, you do the whole process thing again to be like, okay,
Yeah,
I
wow.
only had that CT scan 2 years ago, but what if it's a quick growing tumor? Like what is wrong with me? You go to the darkest place when you have these sudden acute.
You start at the worst and then work your way to worser.
Exactly.
It's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Just don't go on WebMD. That's my only advice. But it was just, it was just a crazy thing to think about. And I remember, you're in shock. You're feeling very emotionally vulnerable, and just being on the verge of tears the whole ambulance ride. But then at some point, my solutions-oriented part of the brain kicked back in again and was like, okay, well, right, what is this?
Yep.
And then go from there. And over the coming 4 months, 4 weeks. So the coming month, I was to find out, and I got referred to a specialist. My driver's license got taken off me. Which actually, that just reminds me, I'm due for my annual checkup because it was about this time in 2019.
I'm glad we were able to help you remind you of that. So
yeah, thank you very much.
Make sure you put in your Google Calendar.
I'll pop it in my calendar right now. But the and until they worked out and got to the root cause of it, and after everything, a sleep study, an MRI of my brain, everything else, basically all they could kind of put it down to was. My neurologist was like, this black spot here, think that's it? It's not even a size. It's like a pixel spot on my brain. And she's like, that. I imagine that must be it. And it's a trauma-induced epilepsy. So as a result, I was formally diagnosed with epilepsy and from trauma-induced from that. And so I was, lived very much. So that was my 30th birthday. So pretty much I'd lived 12 years. Probably more like 10 years, without really even noticing that I had anything like epilepsy. And then it just came crashing into my life, and it became, okay, well, what does this mean for me longer term? I did come across, I'm a Gen Y. The first thing I'm going to do is Google the absolute living crap out of whatever's wrong with me and what's up. As I said, don't go to WebMD links. However, there are
or Dr. Google.
However, there are there's information available, which is where I came across, and my world collided with Epilepsy Action Australia, and I thought, and this brings me here to the studio this afternoon. Is I thought to myself, I was already doing some work in the trauma prevention space. And basically using my story, turning my negative into a positive, however I could. Yeah. And that was, here's how normal I was, that long-winded way of me telling that story just before. Here's how normal I was. Here's a normal kid, abnormal situation caused by 3 seconds, a split-second decision. Ultimately, 3 seconds was what changed my life. And then this was just a way of being like, actually, no, it's so, as you mentioned earlier, it's one of those conditions where you just see it happen and you think this is staged, surely. Where's the cameras? Who's the guy, the punked guy? Is he going to come out?
Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, Ashton Kutcher. Is he going to come out and be like, you got punked? And it's just one of those things that don't quite seem surreal. Yeah. Or the other end of it is people think that person's on drugs or, really high, really drunk, whatever it may be. And so, as a result of that, there's almost that it gets stigmatized as a result. And most people don't know people with epilepsy. And I thought, well, I like to think my friends refer to me as mostly a good bloke if they refer to me as one who can never shut up. And just to put on their radar to be like, actually, Jack's got epilepsy, but he's mostly pretty normal. Now, I must say that. The other thing that happened once I got my diagnosis is I went straight on an epilepsy medication.
Are you still on medication now?
I still am on medication now. So I have to take one pill twice a day, morning and evening. And basically it just builds up levels in my blood to, it's an old drug, which Tegretol, and it just stops. It's completely fixed my seizures. I've never had one since, touch wood, lemonade. Whatever this may be. And so that's just been fantastic for me. But
it's allowed you to live a normal life, I guess, for want of a better
as normal
word.
as possible. As I mentioned, every year I have to have I have to have a driver's or a GP sign off on my driver's license because, again, neurologist came past, and at a certain point, it just became a thing where she basically said, look, happy to have, your annual blood test to check your levels, tick, have a good life, come back if you need me. And so every year at this time, I think August 19th was 2019, August 9th. It was around that time for so every
year. Coming up,
Yeah, so every year I have to have a GP give me the tick to say no seizures. So that's really about as far as I've needed to go with that. But it has meant, I do, I was in risk management for the longest time before my current role in government, and it just became, it almost was a natural extension of what I was already doing from the tender age of 18 by being like, okay, well, hang on, no, I can't do that insanely dangerous thing because I've got extra confounding factors that might make it more likely that I get hurt or injured or worse. So I constantly have to grapple with, I know that there's a significant increase as an epileptic. I love surfing, have always loved surfing.
Yep. Wanted to know what can you do? So you love your surfing. So do you still surf? Can you still surf?
Yep, I can still surf. So I have a skin graft on my legs, which is probably the biggest physical barrier to. I need a customized wetsuit to basically ensure that otherwise it's too tight and completely cuts off circulation to the skin graft, which is incredibly bad according to my plastic surgeon. So I just modify that, and otherwise I can do everything else that goes along with surfing. Which has been fantastic, and it was a great release getting back into the water again in my year of recovery.
Water is a good recovery aid.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Many a person I've spoken to that's gone through something traumatic has found that just being near the ocean, even just putting their feet in the ocean, it just gives them that sense of it'll be okay. So might not work for everyone, but people that I've spoken to, they have found that water seems to be a very healing. There's a healing aspect to it. So I understand the surfing. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. So that was probably of the activities that I kind of did before hockey. There's the chance that if I copped a ball to the knee, it could shatter the pin in my leg, which would be really bad.
Yeah.
Tennis. Still really enjoy tennis, and I cried a bit when Roger Federer retired.
You weren't the only one.
He was my man crush.
You were the only one.
And it does the impact of me stepping means it's bad on my knee, which basically I have a bad knee on my right leg. So that kind of I haven't really touched that too much. But the two that I could do were touch footy and surfing.
Is that due to a touch footy? Is that due to the lack of heavy contact?
Correct, heavy contact. It has meant that I've had to change things because I've got a plate in my femur on my right leg. When you step and put a lot of force on your body, your bones actually flex a little bit, but that makes it very painful when my bones try to flex and they're held.
Yeah, the pin's there.
The pin's there. So it means I just have to step off. If I'm going to try and step somebody, which I can't because I'm over 30, I'll try and step on my left foot to run around someone. But otherwise, for the most part, everything else is in the range of what I can do normally. So that's really good there. But surfing, absolutely. All that time out on the ocean, just you and, waiting for the waves and your mates. And it's almost meditative, just sitting there, peering out, watching the horizon, just waiting. And then, if you see a dolphin, you've had the best day ever. And it was just really good for my mental health at that stage. And I've just, but epilepsy means that, and if I have a grand mal seizure while I'm in water, really, really bad.
So whenever you do go surfing or anything to do with water, you need people around you.
Correct.
Always keeping, an eye on you just in case. Yeah.
Correct. And that has become one where I've had to grapple with and come to my own that, all right, I don't go out the back. I've got what I call my fat man Malibu because my 2-year-old has made me embrace the dad bod.
Yeah.
So I really do stay quite shallow in pretty much chest deep water most of the time at most of the breaks that I go to. And, my wife will always have eyes on me. And, as my daughter grows up, hopefully she gets excited enough about the sport that she'll even be able to help to be a spotter.
Yeah.
But I won't go at an isolated break alone.
Yeah.
So that's right. Even if the people aren't part of my surfing party, for lack of a better term,
yep.
At least there's people around. But that's become the main one that I have to grapple with is sort of avoiding bodies of water. But really, for the most part, because I haven't had any pet emails, the vague, the 1,000-yard stare incidences since, it's kind of lessened my likelihood. And I'm just getting involved via the Epilepsy Action Australia page, epilepsy.org.au. I found out there's even an app on here called SEER, which is using leading research on epilepsy to basically help. Each day you say, "Oh, I've taken." It basically tracks your behaviour and I've taken a tablet morning and evening. Okay, I'm tired. And tracks your mood. Have you had a seizure in the past X amount of days? And so it helps model, because apparently there's some science that says you can predict. So that's what it. It basically helps you capture. And say okay, and then it comes up. For me, it has, because I haven't had a seizure again since. It's kind of like we're missing the hard data points to say when you're going to have another seizure. However, I still religiously log just in case. If I do have another seizure again, then we can.
The data can help.
The data can help to say okay, because then it can come up and say okay, well, between the hours of 8 and 12, you've had seizures all the time. You might be nocturnal seizures. So then medium risk at bedtime. And I must mention that as well about where I had my seizure was as I was waking up. So they thought that's why I got the sleep study done. They thought it might have been related to that. But it also means that if that is where I have my seizures, I'm safer than other people who just drop from a seizure, because
which Pete did, my brother-in-law.
Exactly, because that's it's the gravity that and the smacking of the head which causes further brain injuries. So that's where I've been lucky with my one and only grand mal. But that was definitely a big thing that I was like, oh my God, how much research is there into this? And I have actually got involved with the some of the Monash groups as well, again in the spirit of using my negative to be as positive as possible. Is I'm on a bunch of consumer groups to help advise on how best to run or assist a tiny little contribution about how they might run trials on people with epilepsy and things like that. And even the seizure management plan, we had a little go with the one that was available at epilepsy.org.au. Obviously we haven't needed to use it in anger, because we were sort of like at that stage, it was probably a bit much of us trying to put that into place amongst everything else that was happening in our life at that time, and me coming to grips with my new normal. But it's a very comprehensive document, and that risk management thing, training, if nothing else, it puts a plan in. It's a plan. And once you've practiced the plan a few times, okay, let's pretend Jack's had a seizure. Bam, what do we do? And now that my daughter's 2 and slowly going to start being a bit more aware about how the world works, she may even be able to help out. One of my friends
and play a role in the plan.
And play a role in the plan. Okay,
brilliant.
It's no longer if my wife hears me has a seizure, it might be my wife and my daughter. One of my friends, she had a seizure, and one of her sons, I think was 9 maybe, actually knew what to do and was like, yep, cool, she's having a seizure. Called the ambulance, stayed with her, timed the seizure, did everything that you need to do under seizure first aid. I don't know if her condition was known at that stage, but it was just the fact that she was a big first aid proponent. And it's just practicing is half of the battle having practiced and understanding what it's like in that scenario, so your brain can just go automatic mode. I'm not even going to need to do this, but this is the steps I need to take at the next minute. It's why you do fire drills, and it saves lives.
Prior preparation prevents poor performance. It's the old piece that when I was first in radio school, they used to drum into us, but it's the same kind of theory that you plan things out, and if you know the plan and everyone knows their role in the plan, then the outcomes can be more on the successful side.
Absolutely. So I found that really, really good. But the SEER app was really good too. I do note that they have, certainly something I've been using along my parenting journey has been Healthline. Is it Healthline? The National Healthline, I think it is. And I've found that incredibly useful. And, Epilepsy Action Australia provide the helpline for people to be like, help me out.
As we mentioned earlier on, yes, that helpline, 1300 374537, just throw it in there again.
Yeah, so that a 7-day service, 9 to 5 granted. However, there is that help and support there with a specialist epilepsy nurse to say, okay, well, and can talk you through the process. So if you're terrified about a situation happening, like for example in my advocacy work as part of this, I have had people reach out to me and be like, I'm terrified of SUDEP, which is sudden. Basically, it's sudden death epilepsy. Like someone has a seizure so bad that they just die, or they get so overloaded that they die from it. But then I explain to them like, yes, okay, it can happen. However, statistically, and you break down the stats for them, and people start appreciating the actual risk about it. And so, in her situation, I think, to my read, it felt like she started appreciating the risk. Especially, like whenever we bring it up, you have to bring in the fact that the riskiest thing most people do each day is go and jump in a car seat and go for a drive. But people don't think much about it because, it's
you get accustomed to it, you get used to it, so you become very comfortable with it. So
that's it. That's exactly. You just become comfortable with the risk, and you accept the risk, and you say, okay, I can live my life knowing that, okay. And then what mitigative factors, which is through my whole journey, what mitigative factors do I have to put into my life to adjust to the new normal?
I guess listening to everything you've said, Jay, you can live with it. You can have epilepsy and you can still have a normal life. You can still go surfing, play sport. Admittedly, it might not be hockey, but that's a lame sport anyway, unless it's ice hockey, and then we'd be right behind you. But I've upset the hockey people now. But you can have a normal life. And there are a whole series of other questions that I want to get to, but we've been here for quite some time. So I think we're going to have to get you to come back at another stage so I can delve into those. Sure. Because one of the ones I want to follow up after you get your license check, because I dare say there are some people that have got epilepsy that can and still do drive trucks, ride motorcycles. It might not be something that you do, but there are other things that we need to talk about. So this is a conversation we're going to continue to have. Jack, I really appreciate you coming in and spending time with us today. Thank you so very, very much. A reminder, folks, the website epilepsy.org.au. That national helpline number is 1300 374537. That's 1300 374537. Jack and Ia, thank you so much for spending time with us today and talking about your epilepsy journey. Part thereof, we're going to continue it, but thank you so much for spending time with us today on Flow.
No worries. Thanks, Clayton.
A Flow News 24 update.